Hello. Welcome to Why Now is the Time to Become a Toxic Mold Expert. I'm your host, Bridget Danner. If you haven't met me already, welcome. This is kind of a special time for me. This is the last webinar we're doing this month on this topic. And it's also here to promote our toxic mold trained course that starts Tuesday. So this is going to be the best webinar because it's the last webinar. I think we'll have a small group today. So feel free to um, comment in the chat, ask questions in the chat. I'll take questions at the end, but if right now you want to say your name and where you're from or how you know me or what you want to learn, I'm happy to meet you. And then we'll get started in just a minute. So if you haven't met me before, I live in Arizona. I used to live in Oregon when I was dealing with mold. Not that there's no mold in Oregon, but my mom just sent me a newspaper article that we are in the top 10 driest or least moldy states. So that's good. Interestingly, the top 10 moldiest states are not listed as the Pacific Northwest. They're listed more as I guess you could call it like the Southeast. So that was interesting to me, but definitely, lots of mold in the Pacific Northwest as well. Okay, well, let's get started. And I think I can make this. Oh, yeah, I can make it full screen. Okay. Hi, Cheryl from Tampa. Tampa's so pretty. Whoops, one sec, guys. Oh, Jonathan from Monterey. That's a really pretty area too. I feel like California, it's so unfair, it's such a beautiful, mild state, usually, although you guys got a lot of rain recently. But it is, it has that coastal fog that can really make for mold. Okay. So just a disclaimer that this is a presentation for education, and I definitely recommend you work with a practitioner, a team of practitioners if you're going through mold yourself. And this is me. I started my health career as an acupuncturist. I went to school in New Mexico, then I moved to Oregon. Was working inside a yoga studio, then started my own center. And around the time I started my own center, I also moved into a really moldy home that I was not aware of. So there was sort of a lot of exciting things happening in my life. I was also getting married. I had a baby. I had this new business, but I was getting increasingly sick and needing to, be super, super careful about my lifestyle and being sick nevertheless. And in my case, I was living in mold for something like 8 years without knowing it. So I was running an acupuncture wellness center. Then I moved to an online practice doing more like women's health and hormones. And then when I discovered I had mold, frankly, I was just treading water for a while, just as a person going through mold. And then finally, when I was a little stronger, I felt, called to work in the field and teach about mold and detox because I had just been through so much and learned so much. It's really kind of all I wanted to talk about anymore. And this is Coach Mickey. You may not have met. She's not as like online all the time as me, but she's a really excellent practitioner on the East Coast who has been through mold and thyroid cancer, and is just a wealth of knowledge. She loves to learn. She's been a practitioner a long time. And we go together well because we have, our own different training and style that we bring together on the course. So this is a few pictures from my own mold journey. Um, I was, for me, I guess in the beginning, I was having period problems, frequent like colds and flus, chronic pain. And, then later when I started to work exclusively from home, got stuff, some fatigue. But when I started to work from home, was when I really got worse. And, it was like got insane, frankly. And we ended up finding out about mold mm, a few months after that, maybe, because I was just really looking for answers. And I think everyone who's been through mold remembers the first time someone said, do you think you could have mold? And, the first time you think, oh, well, maybe I could, because for most cases, it's not visible, right? Like this picture on the left, that's like under carpeting. We don't usually know we have mold because we can't see it. But the first time it occurs to us that, oh, yeah, there was this thing that happened or whatever, I think we all remember that moment because it's a life changing moment. So, in this class, we'll talk about some things that are changing with climate and illness in this country and how mold plays a part. Then we'll go through some mold myth that, as a practitioner, I think will be fun for you to kind of to dig into. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about the course. I actually just added a new bonus to the course today, and the whole thing starts Tuesday. So super exciting. So just quickly, what is mold? Um, it's a fungus, and there are 100 species of it, and not all of them are toxic molds, right? Only like a handful, really. But even just being in a place where there's sort of too much wetness and too much mold can be a burden on your body. And then in our modern homes, we also have, carpets off gassing and, you know, even things that we don't think about, like a new TV or computer is off gassing. We have chemicals we're exposed to in so many different ways. And then if there's water, there could also be yeast and bacteria. So this mix is what is especially dangerous to think about. And mold can develop in a home, or it can also develop in a workplace, an RV. But I usually say home in so many ways, right? If we think about a building over the course of its life, is it going to be affected by water? I would say 100% and probably a few times over. You overflow a bathtub. You have a failing hose behind your dishwasher you didn't know about. You have a plumbing leak in the wall you didn't know about. You have backed up gutters. Your foundation isn't draining correctly. There's water in the basement. There's water in the crawl space. Like there's just so many ways. And again, many of them we don't see, so we don't realize that they're happening. Or if there is an incident, we don't manage it correctly. So here's just a few like stats and images I pulled up about water damage. And the first myth we'll cover is that the odds of having mold are low. So the odds of having mold are not low, unfortunately. I remember before I, looked into mold myself, the movie Moldy came out, and I was busy running a practice. I was studying functional medicine, but I was like, I don't have time to watch this movie right now. What are the chances that any of my clients would ever have mold? It was like actually what I thought. I just didn't think it was that common. I don't like to be a fearmonger and say, well, every house is full of mold and every person is full of mold. It's not quite that. It's just saying that the odds actually are pretty high. So the odds of water damage are, really, really high. Here's just some self-reporting on office buildings that they're all 85% said they have past water damage, 45% said they currently do. And not all water damage is necessarily going to lead to, a health issue, but it can. And this is a statistic I pulled up about the percentage of increase that is expected on claims. Let's see how they phrase it. Expected annual damage to mortgaged homes estimated to increase by more than one third between the two projection periods because of changes in flood risks. The increase only reflects the effects of climate change on flooding. So there's more if you look around. There's a lot of articles and things I'm hearing lately on insurance and water damage, and flooding and fires too, right? People, insurance companies are dropping people, that kind of a thing. There's just becoming more and more incidents, and even the government and industry is very aware of this. And this is a new pattern, right? If the flood risk was the same as it was 50 years ago, we wouldn't be seeing an increase, but we are seeing an increase. And from a health perspective, this means more people are going to be potentially exposed and not potentially know what to do about it, or not, remediate correctly. So here on the right is a picture of some proper remediation with an air scrubber and sealing off an area. And some of what we teach in the course is, some things to look for, like home inspection, how to pick a good remediator. I get tons of questions on that. And we've had some people go through the program who are focusing more on the home side, which is fantastic. Somebody who can inspect your home in a conscious way and also really understand the health risks is like a gem, right now in this field. So myth number 2 is kind of a joke, but not really, is that we are a healthy population. So I just honestly feel like in the news, we just don't talk about how sick we are as a country. We have something like 6 in 10 people have at least one chronic disease. And then of those, people have, I think it's 40% have more than one chronic disease. And that's also trending upwards. And yes, some of it is sedentary lifestyles, nutrition, but we'll look in a minute that many chronic diseases can also have a root in mold. And we don't think about it, we don't talk about it, but Alzheimer's, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, they can, asthma, lung issues, kidney issues, can all have a tie to mold. So if we think about, water damage is on the increase, climate is changing, chronic disease is increasing, is it important to be aware and helpful about mold as practitioners? Absolutely. Absolutely. And, if you're here on this call, you know that mold's an issue. But if you think about the general population, there's still a lot of, lack of awareness. I think especially on some of these things, like if you said, well, do you think toxic mold could have anything to do with diabetes? If you asked, 100 people on the street, almost all of them would say, no, that's not what diabetes is from, right? But if you take my course or you read my book, the way that, mold inflames the body and the cell wall and affects the organs, it can absolutely increase insulin resistance. So that's just like one example. I didn't dig into all of these, but I had listed this on one of our emails recently, just there's just lots of research out there on these different conditions in mold. And, I'm not just pulling it out of a hat. This is one article on IBS and leaky gut as a result of mold, and some of the pathogens that can enter because of it, and the activation of the immune system that can happen because of it. And this was happening to me in my case. For me, I was seeing my immune system just really struggling not getting answers, getting sick every couple weeks. Then I saw my thyroid was off and I was having a little bit of antibodies. So, we sometimes we don't find, oh, I was definitely having a lot of food sensitivities too. I had to have a super careful diet. So all this stuff was happening. And no one suggested mold to me for quite a while. And I just wasn't aware of it either. It was some years back. So now I know. And it's frankly always a good question to ask if mold's involved. It may not be the only thing involved. There may be some other factors involved, but especially a client who, like I was at the end, I was cooking all my own food, like religiously, going to bed early, wearing a sleep mask, like doing yoga. Like I was trying so hard and I was still so sick and getting sicker. And that's a great time to look for toxins. Just this is just kind of for fun, but if you want to look online, like at your state, you can see the stats on like diseases, and it's kind of interesting because I noticed like a lot of the northern states have like more depression, probably because of the weather. So it's just interesting. And the bonus I just added to the course was learning how to research. So this is more of like a Google, thing I found, but like this other article is from PubMed, and learning how to navigate PubMed is like a very valuable thing to do that really sets you apart as a practitioner because you're actually looking at the research that's been done instead of just saying, well, so and so said this. Well, so and so might be wrong. Let's see. This is just another article about mold colonization and how it's contributing to chronic illness. This is an article about if you have pre-existing immune dysregulation and the effects when you add mold to that picture. And this is the more positive study about how we can use curcumin from turmeric to help fight some of the oxidative damage that comes from mycotoxins. Okay, myth number 3 is only if you have the dreaded gene do you get sick. So I think the term dreaded gene was coined by Dave Asprey. I'm not sure, and we'll get to know that gene in a minute here. But one thing I hear kind of tossed around, I see in different people's, newsletters is like, well, 1 in 4 people are prone to mold illness. We're all prone to mold illness, really. It's just, depending on various factors, your age, your health history, other illnesses you have, how long have you been in mold, how severe is the mold. If you already have respiratory issues, immune issues, if you're an infant, it's not just if you have one certain gene. So there's just a whole combination of factors, including all our genes, that can play a part in who gets kind of sicker quicker, who's more affected and how in a certain family. One of the things that can be frustrating is within, a family all living in the same home, one person maybe having no symptoms, and it's usually the dad, and we'll learn why. Whereas, maybe the mom is experiencing this, and one kid is having this, and one kid is having another symptom, so that it can be confusing. And it can also lead to some sort of doubt about like the severity of this. Like, how could 2 people be in the same home and one is really sick and one isn't? Women are more prone because of the way that our immune systems work. We make more inflammation when our immune systems are working. So the dreaded gene is this HLA or HLA-DR gene, and it is connected with a tendency to inflammation and autoimmune diseases. I don't usually ask people to test this because it's not going to really change my treatment protocol. Some clients have tested it. I've heard it to be kind of used to keep in mind, like as you move forward, you may always be a person who's pretty sensitive to your environment or foods or toxins in foods. So could just be a good thing to be aware of, but it doesn't mean you're the only one who's going to get sick. This is a little clip from my book and just talking about some other genes that affect detox function. So some of us are just better detoxers than others. Some of us can make up a lot of gaps by, having a great diet and, taking supplements and, you know, things like that. But yeah, we're all just different, right? So myth number 4 has to do with mold versus mycotoxins, and killing the mold is something that could be kind of oversimplified in your remediation process. So mold is a biological living thing, but it releases these non-living things, these just chemical compounds called mycotoxins. And the mycotoxins are, as much of a problem, if not more, and they can get all over the place. And they cannot be killed because they are not living. So they can only be removed or transformed. So here's an image of it from Richie Shoemaker's website, Surviving Toxic Mold. So there are the spores, which are so small they're invisible until they become a larger colony. And then there's the mycotoxins, which are, definitely invisible. Over on the right, you can see the size of the various substances, and they're all very small, and they can all travel and even travel through something like a wall. We think, well, whatever's inside the wall is static, but there's always, little bits of airflow that's able to get through. And so these tiny things can get through as well. So when I work with clients and they're trying to get out of mold, the biggest mistake I see is them not understanding, like, the mycotoxins get everywhere and they're very hard to remove. So taking belongings with you, leaving belongings in the house, we can get into it more, but it's really the biggest mistake I see. And this quote on the bottom is just something I found that I just thought was interesting from a website, and they were saying that the air in a moldy building may contain up to 1 billion spores per cubic meter of air. It's crazy. That's just a crazy amount. So number 5 myth is that mycotoxin testing plus treatment is A plus B equals C. So what I mean by that is what I'm seeing a lot go out online or whatever lately is oversimplified. And this just may be the nature of our minds. So I see a lot of like, oh, I had a test and I had this mycotoxin or I had this mold in my home. So I'm going to take this binder and that's like the formula. That's not the formula. And we'll talk about why, because it's just not that simple. One mold species may produce many different mycotoxins, and several species may produce the same mycotoxin. So there's overlap, and the species is interesting to learn, but if you have one urine test or one dust test, you are not getting like a fully, accurate A plus B kind of information. You're just getting a little snapshot. Furthermore, the production of mycotoxins by a fungal colony vary with environmental conditions. So when a colony is dry or getting moisture or stressed in some ways, it's going to produce different mycotoxins at different times. Just like our bodies are producing different things at different times, right? Like let's say you're on vacation, your production of, certain stress hormones will be low. Whereas if you just got in a big fight, your productions of certain stress hormones are going to look very high if you sample them right then. So if a mycotoxin is a waste product of a mold, those are going to change over time. So again, one test is one test. It's not everything to know. And like we mentioned in the beginning, you have to think about too, like everything's happening all at once. So saying, well, this mold gives this symptom and it goes with this binder, It's too simple, right? What else is happening in the home? What else is happening in that person's life? What's happening in their gut? Everything's happening at the same time. And this one I found quite mind blowing, which is that, we know about many mycotoxins, like 500 of them, which is a lot, um, but more are being discovered. And there's also the kind of theory that there's like a second level of mycotoxins produced sort of after that first parent compound. So it's like the mold is making a mycotoxin, and then the mycotoxin is making like another waste after that that we aren't even measuring. So just a lot of mycotoxins out there, right? And the tests that we do have are great, and they can cover a lot, but they're not capable of covering every type of mycotoxin, which is usually fine, right? Because there's an overlap of categories. But we do have limits on what we now know and test, and those will probably change over time. So this is a sampling of the mycotoxins tested by Vibrant Labs. So they, I don't know, this is like 25 or so, 30 toxins, um, measuring some different types of mold. And again, like there's some overlap. This is a sample report from Real Time Lab. So they measure a little differently. It's sort of less mycotoxins, and I think it's a slightly different testing method. I can't remember. This one from Mosaic Labs, which is a lab we've used the longest in our practice. This isn't one of their sample reports, but I thought this was a great graphic because instead of saying, well, you have this amount of aflatoxin, it's showing like, hey, if you're dealing with, liver symptoms or liver markers being off, aflatoxin is one of the toxins that is hepatotoxic, liver toxic. So you can see aflatoxin, which is a common toxin. It's actually in almost all of the categories, most of them. So it's affecting, all sorts of body systems. And this graphic, I think, is almost more important to focus on. Instead of just saying, oh, I have this thing, I need to remove it. What are your symptoms you're experiencing? And how do you want to feel? That, yes, we're going to work on removing toxins, but we also have to restore the body that's been injured by these toxins and think about the mechanisms that your body is experiencing as you are exposed to these toxins. And to me, this is like a very sobering graphic, because do you want to stay in a moldy environment when you have brain toxic, kidney toxic toxins around you? It's dangerous. Here's a picture of some of the chemical structures of mycotoxins. So this is just kind of summarizing what I just said. You can tell I have a strong opinion on that. Another thing to think about is the urine test is measuring what's been processed through the body and then passed through to the kidneys and bladder, right? That's what urine is. So by the time it comes out in your urine sample, you've been exposed to a mycotoxin. The liver has processed it. So the liver can process toxins. And then if it's water soluble, it's been put to the kidneys, right? So what you're actually measuring is not even the mycotoxin. It's a metabolite of a mycotoxin, which is great that we have that technology. But just again, and know like, what you're testing. Know that, there's more to it. So what should you do besides just A plus B? So first you need to make sure the foundations are in place before you start detoxing. Make sure you're having bowel movements, getting a good night's sleep, eating real food. And then make sure you are either, moved out of mold or in the process, because I see a lot of people wanting to know their treatment protocol for their body, but they're still in mold. So you can't clean something out if you keep getting it dirty every 2 seconds, right? Every time you breathe. So you got to focus on that. It's an environmental illness. Um, Detoxing, you have to do it carefully for where you're at in your age and your sensitivity. Moving lymph, I think, is super helpful. But again, you have to kind of be ready for it. There's people who can do every detox technique, and there are people who can barely do anything. So you have to choose carefully. And then you really need to restore body systems. That's a big conversation that we teach more in the course. But, if let's just say the gut. If you've been in a moldy environment for a long time, your gut has been getting more and more sideways. You're inflamed. You have a very short list of foods you can tolerate. You have constipation or diarrhea. Just getting out of mold is kind of like not enough, really. Like, you need to rebuild the flora of the gut. You need to lower inflammation. Maybe you're going to work on infections in the gut. Maybe you're going to work on candida and biofilms, right? So that's a whole thing. And I'm a fan of keeping things as simple as possible. I don't think we need to like run every lab immediately and put you on a gazillion different things immediately. But if you're really struggling to get that gut back, yeah, we're gonna we're gonna run some labs. We're gonna take a deeper look. But usually, I'll start people on more gentle things like prebiotic fiber and probiotics and immune support for the gut, and that can go a long way. So I try to keep things simple. But this is why getting over mold can take a long time. And people ask me that question too, like how long is it going to take? And I mean, frankly, it can take a couple years, if you're really out of mold, because first you got to detox and then you got to restore everything. So number 6 is sort of related. It's that only binders get rid of mycotoxins, and it's really not true. There's a lot of things that neutralize mycotoxins, and while I think binders are great, and we'll talk more about them, some people don't tolerate them. And that's okay, because you don't technically need them. You can do it with fiber, you can do it with a healthy microbiome, you can do it with, detox techniques, taking more antioxidants, supporting your liver health. There's lots of ways. So here's the liver, and it goes through, you probably heard phase 1 detox, and then phase 2. So the first phase, it's using a chemical process to kind of break the toxin free, and then it becomes very volatile. And this process can make a lot of oxidative stress. So if you're going through a mold, you need a lot of antioxidants, which if you've listened to me before, I've talked about, hopefully. Flavonoids, glutathione, vitamin C. You just need a lot to deal with how hard your liver is working. But there's lots of little phases, and we'll show more about that going on in phase 1. And then phase 2 is sort of like attaching the toxin to something else to be removed in the urine or the sweat or the bile. So it's sort of choosing a sort of waste pathway in phase 2. So you can see on the bottom, there's a lot of vitamins that your liver likes. It likes amino acids, B vitamins, glutathione, magnesium. So sometimes people skip to certain, I'm taking a binder, I'm taking NAD or something. I do like NAD, but I find that people can skip something as simple and affordable as a B vitamin, which sometimes you want to take twice a day because it's water soluble and your body will it can't hold on to it. So if you're really fatigued and you're detoxing, take your B vitamin in the morning and lunchtime. That's just like one simple tip. Take vitamin C a couple times a day. Be getting protein, 3-4 times a day for your liver. So there's a lot you can support your liver with that's just simple, like foods, multivitamin, vitamin C. Certainly you can get B vitamins from food too, but you may want to supplement as well. I actually think I was functional in my home for so long just because I had my diet like so dialed in. I didn't feel amazing, but I was functional. I was raising a toddler, running a business. because I ate really, really well. So here's a little bit about how the body processes a couple of the mycotoxins. So they all are different. So some of them will use hydrolysis. Here is like in this example, number one. Um, so it's interesting. I think there's another graphic here in a second about that. The gut can also be helpful in detox. If you have a healthy mucosal lining, it can actually transform a mycotoxin to a non-toxic compound. But the key is, do you still have a healthy mucosa? Many of us do not, from stress. And if say so let's say you're pretty healthy and you don't live in mold, but you get exposed to a little bit, just maybe you're out or something like that, or you ate something gross or whatever. A healthy gut can deal with it and transform it, which is amazing. But if you keep getting exposed all the time, it's gonna run out of its ability. The mold's gonna start winning out over the body. Here's some other interesting information about what can happen in the gut, or what strains of probiotics and prebiotics can help transform mycotoxins in the gut. So again, binders are not our only option. There's a lot of things that are powerful. This is showing some of the different mycotoxins, the detox pathway that the liver utilizes to detoxify them, and then foods and supplements that support those particular pathways. So let's say you do know that you're positive for ochratoxin. It's the glucuronidation pathway. These certain supplements and foods support that. So it's cool. I really like this. This is some research that Dr. Neil Nathan compounded from looking at various sources. There's actually a lot of study been done on mold, mostly from the animal industry, because if they're feeding animals moldy grain and the animals are getting sick or they can't reproduce, it becomes a big problem. So a lot of the research has been done on livestock before us. Food can also act as binders. So fibrous foods. This is an example about cooking steamed greens. Just a great reminder to eat your steamed greens. I know our coach Mickey, before she puts people on a supplement binder, will have them start with steamed greens. I think this is not the best graphic. There's better ones out there, but there are graphics out there about, which mycotoxins are binded by which binders. So we usually prefer like a binder rotation because we don't know which ones your body are going to prefer and respond to the best, which ones make you sick or constipated. And we don't totally know what mold you've been exposed to, right? We only got probably one snapshot. So this is our binder. Just to back up, a binder is meant to trap toxins in the colon, especially by potentially trapping bile and bile salts to let it go out in the stool. So the body tries to recycle bile salts, and then the toxins can be recycled back. So it's really important to have bile that moves, have a bowel movement, and then use fiber or other binders just to make the toxins go out with the bowel movement. So the binding is maybe weaker than you think. It's not like it's trapped in a steel cage. That's why occasionally people feel sicker on binders, because the toxin is being kind of dragged through. Sometimes people don't feel good on binders too because they're constipated. So there's some things that could be, tweaked so a client can tolerate it better. And just a reminder that not everything is in the bowels. Can also be mycotoxins in the lungs and the nose, potentially a lot of areas. So we have to also think about detoxing other areas of the body. Moving into home testing, I must have a myth coming up. I'm not sure. This was my old home in Oregon. We had the siding redone as one of the things after we discovered mold. So I'm a big advocate that if you want to be doing mold as a healthcare provider, you need to know a decent amount about the home. You don't have to be like the world's foremost expert, but you need to know a decent amount because clients are going to be asking you questions. So that's why we include it in our course. I think I mentioned earlier, some people in our course are actually kind of becoming more like home experts and moving forward in that way. So one of our graduates became a home inspector. He's really just doing it like on the side for friends right now because he has a normal, good paying job. But he just went through a lot with mold in his family and he got a lot of wrong information. So he's just kind of exploring and giving back. Oh, here's our myth. So just run an ERMI. So I do hear a lot of my clients come to me from another practitioner, kind of for a second opinion, and they're like, "Well, my practitioner said to run an ERMI, and now I don't know what to do with it." I hear that one a lot. An ERMI is also just a snapshot, right? It can just if you chest dust all over your house and you get this ERMI. First of all, the ERMI report wasn't really made for like a homeowner. And it doesn't tell you where the mold came from. It just tells you that there was mold present or maybe the strains or whatever. But yeah, it's confusing. It's really confusing. So we talk more about the testing in our course and, inspection and all that. The home creates a lot of questions. When I wrote my book and did a bunch of podcasts, even though I'm more of a health expert, we would spend 95% of the interview just like, how do you know you have mold in your home? How do you test your home? Blah, 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 blah. It's in a sense kind of where people start in a way. And I think that's fine because you do need to know like, is it from the home? Where is it coming from? But just know that an ERMI is just one little piece that you can use to, assess your home. It's not a sufficient piece. It just isn't. Um, and the report is tricky. So my friend Brian Carr with ERMI Code has made a a resource called ERMI Code, and you can put your ERMI results in there, and they'll sort of assess it for you, which is helpful and it's affordable. But again, that still is not telling you, okay, where is this mold coming from? Is it from like an old incident or you just don't know, right? So this picture on the right is some of the moisture damage under our siding. So on the left here, I kind of mentioned to you the biggest mistakes I see are kind of cross-contamination, um, not understanding contaminated belongings, bringing things with you, and just plain not moving. It's kind of saying you're figuring it out, but 5 years later, you're still there. I think you got to put a time limit on how long you're figuring it out. I've had people tell me that their health is getting worse and worse, and they've been fighting their HOA for years. Okay, well, why are you still there fighting your HOA? Like they're not important than your health. So I'm saying that a little harshly, but at the same time, you can't make a client move, and you need to be sensitive to what they're going through, which is stressful, and their brain is inflamed, and they're tired. So, I meet people where they're at, and I give them my best advice, but I don't like dismiss people that they haven't moved or yell at them or anything like that. Um, and there's some clients that I see who are in this refusing to move situation and they kind of just don't come back because they're sort of keeping themselves stuck in a sense. And then I have other clients who, yeah, maybe they're still in the home for a bit, figuring it all out, but they do figure it out. They understand the importance and they take action. So I'm not saying this is easy. I've been through it. You've probably been through it. So something we teach in the course is just sort of the nuance of all of this. I just read this great book on narcissism, and they were saying that, it's confusing to the victim, so to speak, because there's lots of truths happening at once. Um, you have a great family, but you're walking on eggshells, and you don't want to leave, but nothing's getting better. And it's similar with mold. There's just a lot of truths happening at the same time, and it can be hard to move forward. So one thing that I do and I kind of teach in the course is, you make your best decisions from a place of calm. So getting to the body more relaxed, if you can meditate or journal in the morning, even do that in the night too. Some of us are just almost addicted to our own stress response, and we're always in it. And if we can calm down a little bit and start to see, okay, yeah, actually, my mother really wants to support me, or actually, maybe I'm ready to move back to my hometown and this is the right moment to do it. Like, you start to see possibilities when you're not so focused on what's going wrong, so to speak, when you start like looking for solutions. So another thing we go through in the course is where to look for mold and how. We also have a bonus in the course about DIY inspection, which is a really great bonus from that same provider, Brian Carr, with We Inspect. So these are some things that you could look for. I think sometimes people feel like it's a big, big mystery, but once you can actually learn this stuff, right? You can learn how and where to look for mold and water damage in a home. There's tools that you can use. This is one that's important to have. It's a hygrometer, and you want it, I have one now in my thermostat, but if I had a basement, like I lived in a different state and I had a basement, I would definitely want one of these in my basement. And that basement needs to be kept below 50% humidity. So I thought we had a few more tools here too, but there's different little tools you can have to do, your own monitoring and inspection. It doesn't have to be all like kind of handed over to another expert. If you do hire an inspector, these are some organizations that certify people. Our student went through that Normie program. That's the second one listed there, and he really liked it. You're welcome to take a picture of any of these slides, and if you want to just go back to this, it'll be on YouTube as well. Here's some of the testing methods that your inspector might use or you could buy, and like the pros and cons. And our final myth here is just use bleach. And while there actually is a component in bleach that kills mold, the problem is that bleach is mostly water. So that can feed the porous surfaces if you're putting bleach on a porous surface. So just know that remediation is a very detailed, careful process. And if your landlord or whoever is telling you, oh, it's no big deal, like just put some paint on it, just put some bleach on it. No, it's not correct advice. Using something like a fogger or an air filter or cleaning spray, those are more of like a later step. They're not the only step. I hear that myth too, like, oh, just buy this really expensive gadget and then you never have to remediate your mold. No, I mean, I've never heard that, and I've interviewed a lot of different experts in this space. So, just like you're restoring your body is a process, the same for the home. That's why I'm a fan of moving. It's hard to do it to the level that your body needs, although it's possible. Um, but it's just, yeah, it can just kind of drive you batty trying to get everything right. It can be a very exhausting process. Here's some things about hiring a mediator and what to look for. Maybe if they've had some certified special training. This slide got a little cut off, but hopefully you enjoyed that deep dive. I don't mean it to stress you out, but more to say that there's a lot of gray area and misinformation in this mold space, and we are really on the forefront of making that clearer and giving you a roadmap you can use with your clients that is based on science. It's not based on trends or whatever. We've been in the trenches with our own mold and our own clients. And Mickey was encouraging me for some years to do a practitioner training. So we finally did. There's a lot of need out there for it. So I think it's a really important thing to do. I know it can seem daunting to take on this type of work, but we really make it a lot simpler for you. And I know mold can be very isolating, and it's nice to be in a community. So here's a few of our former students who were kind enough to share a photo with us. They had some people come on just more for like personal interest, or they're thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll add this to my practice. We had some FDNs. That's a really nice tie for this course because FDN is looking at the whole body systems, right? And that's great for healing, but adding this detail mold piece is really helpful. We had 2 pharmacists last time, and I think we had 2 or 3 acupuncturists, which I thought was really great. So again, it starts this Tuesday. It's 8 weeks live, but it is also recorded. It comes with a lot of handouts. We have a test at the end, and I may add like a quiz for every module just to keep you, engaged and remembering everything. We do have transcripts now. We have a directory now. I added a case studies call. We're adding more case studies to the slides. So after the first time, I think the case studies were really what people wanted more of. And this is, I'll just quickly go over like what the lessons look like. I think that there's some things that are really unanswered and confusing for people. Things like mast cell, mold colonization, biofilms, nasal treatments, and we cover all that. We go over testing, like the companies we like, looking at some tests, drainage, binders, symptoms. I do a lot around how to actually like make this practical, how to assess a client, how to determine where they are and what's too much for them and like where they're at right now and how to get them to the next, phase of healing. This graphic is a little bit wrong. I actually just added another bonus. So we have a ton of bonuses. These are the graphics from last time, but we have a DIY inspection course. It's like $400 for free. We've got environmental health module. It's $200. We've got this mold kit that's $200. So we've got some really cool stuff as bonuses. So it's a good deal. You can use this QR code to find the page, or there's the link, and I'm just gonna show you the page really quickly. Okay, and this is the new module I just added. It's called Learn to Research, and I showed you some studies on here. I didn't do the studies, right? But I know how to read a study, and I'm thankful to a mentor I had who taught me how to do that. Because now, if I want to write a blog or do a video or whatever I want to do, I know how to find out what the truth is, so to speak, right? Because there's a lot of rumors in health, and just there's a nuance. So seeing, okay, like say you're curious, like, oh, I don't know, like I have an example in here. How common is mold in coffee? We hear about mold in coffee as sort of this marketing thing, but is it like common? Should we be worried about it? What's the deal? Like that's something you can research and have a real answer for your clients. This is the kind of the energetic bonus I talked to you about. This is that remediation and inspection course you get for free. So I answer a lot of your questions on here about pricing and blah blah blah. So I hope you will check out the page. I'll put the link in the chat here. There's some student testimonials on here as well. And I decided just over the weekend that this was going to be the last time I offer this live. So it's really valuable to get us totally live. We deliver the information, but then we're there to take questions really till you're out of questions. So sometimes we're taking questions for 45 minutes. I'm doing a whole extra case study module. So I think if you can come now, it's definitely worth it, because I know for me as a student, I'd rather interact with a community than take a pre-recorded course. So this is your shot. This is your chance. So I hope you can join us. I'm going to move over to questions here. You're welcome, EC. I appreciate it. Oh, that's so cute. You said, I love moving. Changing scenery is fun. I'm just like, that's so cute. I mean, I think a lot of people have big resistance to moving. And I think some of that is just, like the brain and the energy field are so with mold. But then other people are just like, moving on. I agree. A change of scenery is nice. Why do we act like the house we're in is the only one out there? I was just on Craigslist this morning. There's like 5 zillion apartments available in Phoenix. I know that's not true everywhere, but to open up the world is like, this is fun. I get to make change. This is an adventure. I totally agree with you. I live in Arizona now. I never thought I would. I have a completely different life than I ever thought. I have no desire to go back to the old life I had. No desire, right? So there is something beautiful waiting for you when you get through this messy process. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's really sweet. Yeah, and you mentioned you can't remediate schools and workplaces and hotels. Yeah. I mean, if it's somewhere you're going to be temporarily, you can bring like a diffuser or air filter. Depends on your sensitivity. If you're super sensitive, you can't even spend the night in a place that bothers you. But if it's a workplace, it's a whole other issue. You may want to, it's a big issue. But often your employer won't fully understand the severity of mold, and maybe they'll run an air test and tell you it's negative, and it's often a better situation to move on as well. Unfortunately, I do have an interview here on YouTube with Christina Bear. She's an attorney and she works on a lot of environmental cases, but she talked to me about mold and your rights and stuff like that. So, I don't take on that issue as much, but you can look for that interview in my YouTube. Jonathan said the Mold Finders Radio podcast is awesome. Yeah, it's so great. So I think Brian has a podcast and so does Michael. I just really appreciate both of them because, they're being really progressive. Like they're just getting out there, like making new programs, making new software. And, people want the information. So it's fantastic. I'm just going to put this in. There we go. And get back to some questions. Does laundry machine detergent kill mold? So not usually. So they do sell special detergents. CitraSafe is one brand, and then there's a company that's called like EC3. So there are special detergents that can treat kind of mold and mycotoxins, or you can use like borax for a detergent. So there's some like make your own. I would just be cautious with clothes because if they've been exposed a long time in my opinion, they become very hard to clean effectively. So there's some debate on that. But I can tell you I've put stuff through the laundry and just it's and then I'll put my face in it and I still am affected, you know. And then I worry about you contaminating your laundry, your washing machine and your dryer by putting all your moldy stuff through it. So you can go to a laundromat, but then like once I went to a laundromat and they're gross and I was like exposed to all this fragrance and chemicals. So the clothing is a tricky one. But even just for maintenance, you could use more of a like a mold laundry detergent, say when you're in your like recovery phase. Lynn said house plants and foods can have mold. Yeah, so if especially if you overwater house plants, they can be moldy. And they I think they can contribute to that mix we talked about of having like, you know, bacteria and candida and stuff in the home. Things like diaper pails can add a lot of, you know, moisture and food for bacteria in the home. So just, you know, just be aware of it. I didn't have any houseplants for a while, but I do again now. I don't think we're all being brought down by houseplants necessarily, but when you're sensitive, that may be in the mix. And even think about if your houseplant's been in the moldy house, I wouldn't bring it to your next house. Just, you know, let it go. Hi, Vincent. Hi, Sandy. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Mary from Phoenix. Yeah, Mary's mentioning she thinks her daughter at university is being exposed to mold, and that's a really common one too. In the dorms, you know, the properties aren't maintained well, so it's a bummer. That's another one, Mary, where it may be a hard fight and just easier if you can find a new place for her to live. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Any last minute questions? We do have 3 people in the program international. So if you're international, you're welcome to join. I know some of you may be working on mold for yourself and not as much of a practitioner, and it's really up to you. I think if your brain's working and you're ready to learn, like, come on in. Like, this is going to be, you know, high level. It's going to be like saving you, you know, many visits with a practitioner. But if you're just going through it and like you're just not ready for all that, it's okay. You know, maybe this isn't the fit for you. You could work with us privately. You know, you can buy the course and have it to go back to later. But we do keep it at a high level because we're trying to train practitioners. So we don't, you know, we don't make it more simple for people who have a mold brain. We're like, we're taking it all the way. So again, we did have some people in there for their personal interests, but it is like a practitioner level course. So Cheryl was saying that, that they're more cost effective. There's kind of support around more cost effective solutions. I mean, there are Facebook groups and stuff out there. We had one, but I just wasn't like happy about it, how it was sort of going. So I kind of shut ours down. I, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty decent advocate about talking about costs and options. I did a webinar last month and I was talking about how things like, you know, plain vitamin C, you know, plain-ish vitamin C, charcoal, you know, dry brushing. There's a lot of things you can do that are cheap. Um, you know, moving isn't always cheap, and that you may need a new couch, you may need a new bed. Like, I can't make that much cheaper, but you can, you know, you can buy cheaper items. You can like literally just have lawn chairs in your house for a year. Sometimes that's the better option because the mental like fear about buying a couch that turns out, you know, I had a real issue with buying a new couch because I was just always afraid everything was going to get contaminated again. So I don't know if there's like a specific resource where people are talking about low cost options, but I know we have some blogs on it. I think that would be a really like positive idea. You're welcome if you join this course to like be talking about it more. I'm happy to, if people are connecting and making community. One thing I find in functional medicine is it can get really like nitpicky and like argumentative, like, oh, you've got to do things this way, you've got to follow this person's protocol. um, I don't really think that's true. I think there's a lot of options out there, and if you need this to be cheaper, if you need to like come up with creative ideas about where to live, like there's options out there. Not to say that like you can't avoid some costs, right? It's like having a child. Like if you have a child, is it going to be free or low cost? Well, no, there's going to be costs associated with the process. Um, but yeah, I think there's ways to save money for sure. I always caution people, I see people put tons of money into certain fancy treatments or gadgets or like very exclusive practitioners, and then be disappointed because they kind of put all their eggs in one basket and be disappointed. So I encourage people to kind of tread more lightly and see what resonates with them, and not try to go all in financially on, oh, this new house is it. Well, you don't know, maybe that new house has a bunch of problems too. So yeah, I agree with you, Cheryl. Like it would be great to get that discussion going more. And I don't see it happening as much. But I do see my individual clients, some of them are real troopers. They're really working with their own sensitivities and their own budget, and they're making progress. So yeah, there's my 2 cents on all that. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will put out an email with the replay of this webinar, and some information will follow in the next couple of days about this course, because the deadline is almost here. If you reply to the email, it'll go to me. Like if you have a question about the course, we try to cover all the questions, but if you've got a remaining question, you can let me know. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.